A woman with no friend is not a woman who is weak, lonely, or behind. She is a woman standing at the edge of transformation. Sometimes life isolates you not to break you, but to rebuild you. Sometimes the silence around you isn't emptiness, it's preparation. And sometimes the absence of people is the presence of your own rebirth. There comes a moment in a woman's life when the world grows quiet around her. No constant messages, no invitations, no noise, just the echo of her own breath and the weight of her own thoughts. At first, that silence feels unsettling, almost like the universe has turned its back. But with time, something becomes clear. This silence is not an ending, it is an awakening. When a woman has no friend, she is placed in a space where she can finally hear herself without interruption, without influence, without pressure to fit the mold others built for her. And in that stillness, a deeper kind of strength begins to rise. In the absence of people, she begins to meet parts of herself she forgot existed. She revisits old dreams she shelved because others didn't believe in them. She starts asking questions she never had the courage or time to ask. What do I truly want? Who am I without the voices around me? What parts of me have been dimmed to make others comfortable? As she searches for those answers, layers begin to shed, layers of insecurity, layers of approval seeking, layers of expectations forced upon her. The woman who once felt lost in the crowd begins to find herself in the quiet. But solitude isn't soft. It challenges her. It exposes her fears. It forces her to confront her weaknesses without distraction. When she breaks down, there is no shoulder to lean on. When doubt creeps in, there is no friend to silence it. Yet this is exactly what builds her. Every moment she survives alone becomes a moment of proof that she is stronger than she ever realized. She learns to stand without needing a hand to pull her up. She learns to comfort herself when anxiety sets in. She learns to motivate herself when her energy collapses. This is not loneliness, it is training. Training for the woman she is becoming. Slowly, the solitude that once felt painful becomes powerful. She begins to enjoy her own company. She starts creating her own joy, her own routines, her own peace. She stops depending on others to fill the emotional gaps inside her because she now knows how to fill them herself. And with this independence comes clarity. Clarity about who deserves to come into her life and who does not. She stops chasing friendships that are not genuine. She stops holding on to people who only show up when they need something. She becomes selective, not because she is bitter, but because she has learned the value of her own presence. Eventually she transforms. Her silence becomes strength. Her solitude becomes identity. Her inner voice becomes the loudest guiding force in her life. She walks through the world differently, more grounded, more aware, more powerful. She no longer fears being alone, because she knows solitude does not break her, it builds her. A woman with no friend becomes a woman who trusts herself deeply, who moves with purpose, who rises without applause. And once she discovers that level of inner strength, she becomes unstoppable, because her power no longer comes from the world around her. It comes from within. There is a specific kind of inner fire that only ignites when a woman is forced to rely on herself. When there are no friends to call, no one to reassure her, no one to guide her through her doubts, she begins to develop a strength that is raw, real, and deeply rooted. This strength doesn't come from comfort, it comes from necessity. When she has no one to run to, she realizes she must become the person she needed. She must become her own motivator, her own advisor, her own protector. And as she steps into that role, she discovers a version of herself she never knew she could be. Self-reliance begins quietly. It shows up the first time she wipes her own tears without expecting someone to notice. It shows up the moment she decides to fix her problems instead of waiting for someone else to rescue her. It shows up when she pushes herself to keep going on a day when everything feels heavy and she knows no one is coming to check on her. These small moments no one else sees, become the foundation of her transformation. She realizes she is capable of doing more than she ever imagined because she is doing it alone. The world often teaches women to look outward for support, validation, and strength. But when life removes those voices, another truth emerges: the strongest support system a woman can ever have is the one she builds inside herself. She learns to trust her instincts because there is no one else to override them. She learns to believe in her decisions because she cannot rely on someone else to guide them. She learns to take risks because staying stuck is no longer an option. Every challenge she faces becomes a lesson in self-mastery, and every step she takes alone becomes a reminder that she has more resilience than she ever gave herself credit for. This stage changes her relationship with fear. What once scared her now fuels her. She stops fearing rejection because she is no longer dependent on acceptance. She stops fearing abandonment because she has already survived standing alone. She stops fearing judgment because she understands that those who do not walk her path cannot define it. Self-reliance gives her a new kind of courage, the courage to shape her own life without asking for permission, without explaining herself, and without shrinking to make others comfortable. And as she strengthens herself from within, something powerful shifts. She becomes unshakable. She becomes the kind of woman who knows how to rebuild her life after every setback because she has done it before. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't tolerate disrespect because she knows her worth is not dependent on anyone else. She becomes the kind of woman who carries herself with a quiet confidence, an energy that tells the world, I can stand on my own, but I choose carefully who stands beside me. This is the beauty of a woman who has learned self-reliance. She becomes whole, complete, and grounded. She no longer needs people. She chooses them. She no longer fears being alone. She embraces it. And she no longer looks for someone to complete her. She understands she was complete all along. From this point forward, every relationship she forms, every decision she makes, and every dream she pursues is built from a place of strength, not dependency. That is the power of walking through life with no friend and emerging stronger than ever. There comes a turning point in every woman's life when she realizes that walking alone was never meant to be her final destination. It was meant to be her transformation. After enduring days, months, or even years of isolation, something inside her begins to shift. She wakes up one morning and recognizes that she is no longer the same person who once felt invisible, overlooked, or forgotten. She has grown in silence, strengthened in solitude, and rebuilt herself piece by piece without anyone witnessing the process. And now, she stands on the edge of a new chapter with a level of self-awareness and power she never believed she could possess. What she once saw as loneliness becomes the foundation of her identity. She begins to understand that the people who left were not losses. They were necessary exits that made room for her evolution. She sees that the friendships that faded did not diminish her worth. They revealed her capacity to survive without constant support. She realizes that every quiet moment, every tear shed in the dark, every battle fought alone was shaping her into someone who no longer needs validation to move forward. Instead of fearing solitude, she starts to value it. Instead of craving company, she becomes intentional about who deserves her presence. Instead of feeling broken, she feels awakened. This awakening brings clarity. She becomes aware of the energy she allows into her life. She stops entertaining conversations that drain her. She stops keeping people around out of habit. She stops forcing connections that were never aligned with her spirit. Her standards rise, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. She has learned too much in the quiet to let noise disrupt her peace again. She has worked too hard to rebuild herself to let anyone tear her down casually. Her boundaries strengthen, her intuition sharpens, and her ability to walk away becomes one of her greatest powers. But the deepest transformation happens within her mindset. She begins to see her future differently. She no longer dreams small because she no longer sees herself as small. She no longer doubts her abilities because she has evidence of her strength written in every chapter she survived alone. She begins to pursue opportunities she once thought were out of reach. She starts choosing environments that elevate her, rather than environments she had to shrink to fit into. She walks through the world with purpose, passion, and a newfound sense of identity that cannot be shaken by anyone. And then something remarkable happens. Life begins to mirror her transformation. She starts attracting people who respect her rather than drain her. She meets individuals who match her energy, not manipulate it. She draws relationships that are built on authenticity, not convenience. Because now she connects from abundance, not desperation. She no longer seeks companionship to fill a void. She seeks it to complement her growth. The woman who once felt alone becomes the woman who chooses carefully, loves intentionally, and walks confidently. Ultimately, a woman with no friend becomes a woman who discovers herself. She becomes a woman who transforms silence into strength, solitude into power, and independence into identity. She emerges not just healed but evolved, not just surviving but rising. And once she reaches this stage, nothing and no one can pull her back into the version she outgrew. She has seen who she becomes when she stands alone, and she will never again question her worth, her power, or her ability to rise from anything life places in her path. She becomes unbreakable, not because she never fell, but because she learned to rise alone.